Chapter 263. Leader, my apologies for interrupting your conversation. Regarding the task you have ordered, there are too many things that require your personal attention and decisions. It seems we can no longer afford to delay. Ah, this has gone on longer than I anticipated. At the request of the young mage who had interrupted his discussion with their research, Michelin abruptly rose from his seat. I understand you all need rest after battle, but given the circumstances, it has been hectic. We will step out for a while. Please take this opportunity to rest and discuss the details of our cooperation. As you said, we don't have time to waste. Understood. After Michelin and the mage hurriedly exited, the members of the cavalry who had been holding their tongues began to vent their complaints. My back and shoulders are killing me. That's to be expected after all the fighting we have done. You should rest and loosen up those muscles. That leader sure gives off an intense impression. Phew, just standing in front of him makes me tense. As the members checked on each other's condition, Yudhi silently turned his gaze toward Kishir. The man, who had been keeping a low profile until now, approached in response to his gaze and quietly opened his mouth. I didn't expect we would be forming an alliance so quickly, but it's something that had to be done, so it's good that it happened. Yes, Yudhid, looking at him, cautiously added, I was worried that I might be acting contrary to your wishes, Commander. I am relieved if that is not the case. Why would it be? Kishir, with a candid reply, soon softened his tone. It's natural not to miss an opportunity waving in front of your eyes. At one point, I even mistook you for Kana Want. I wasn't that. Don't be so modest. Whether Kishir's compliment, which may or may not have been fortunate for Kana, who was in conversation with other members, made either response tremble. Kishir silently chuckled. It seemed almost fantasical how either once muttered that being too complacent could be problematic. So, how should I praise you then? You don't have to, just focus on the cooperative plan that Michelin mentioned. No, good work should be praised. That's a priority. Kishir, who had been muttering about how to do it, reached out to Yidhir a moment later. Yidhir initially thought he was going to ruffle his hair again, but instead, Kishir's hand skimmed past his ear and lightly patted on his shoulder before pulling away. You must have had a hard time dealing with this alone, but you did well. Thanks to you, the rest of our dispatched forces will have an easier time here. Yidhir really felt a deep sense of embarrassment. It was obvious he wouldn't touch his head in such a public place, but he had lost some objective judgment due to Kishir's numerous spontaneous behaviors. That aside, the last bit of research discussion was quite interesting. I can hardly believe I was oblivious to this until now. The man, oblivious to Yudhir's internal struggle, smoothly shifted the topic. Yudhir, calming the turmoil in his chest, recalled the last bits of research discussion before Michelin left. Soon he was able to regain his composure. I had little knowledge of magic, so many aspects were difficult to comprehend. Commander, have you grasped everything? As much as necessary. The fact that he had comprehended the complex magic research that Michelin had hurriedly explained was impressive in and of itself. Kishir, who had been silent, seeming to contemplate how to explain further, continued after a moment. In simple terms, they discovered a place within this forest where magic energy is densely concentrated. They have attempted to induce change there over several years. Until recently, there was no sign of progress, but they have started seeing changes and were hoping to regain support from the Pearl Tower. Though Kashir's explanation was much more succinct than Michelin's, it was still difficult to fully understand. Nevertheless, the critical part was singular. Western Mage Union had observed phenomenon that suggested an impending disaster several times, unbeknownst to even them, and changes began to occur in the subjects of their research around the same time. I had thought that there was only a connection between the strange cracks in the air and the monster anomalies. But now there is the alternation of the ruins the mages were researching. The moment when changes in the ruins were detected, the time when the cracks were first observed, and when monsters in the west began to act unusually, could these coinciding incidents be a mere coincidence? To find the answer, I need to investigate these ruins more closely. The magic spring in the ruins, which was not considered important at first, might have been the most critical factor in this case. This was merely speculation at this point and could be wrong, but even the thought was startling. Being more cautious than ever, Yudir asked Kishir a question. Commander, do you think the changes in the ruins could be related to the anomalies with the monsters or the strange crack we saw earlier? Well, just because events overlap in timing doesn't necessarily mean they are related, but Kishir paused midway through his response. His gaze, from beneath his thick hat, scanned over Yudhir's face, more serious than ever. It seems my assistant already thinks so, don't you? For a moment, Yudhir felt as if his inner thoughts had been precisely pricked. His eyelid twitched slightly. Wouldn't your judgment be more accurate than mine, Commander? I find your eyes and your judgment more trustworthy. Kishir responded as if it were nothing, left a brief pause, and rubbed his chin as he continued. Anyway, if you really want to hear my answer, yes, I too feel the need to investigate the changes at the ruin site more closely. Really? Of course, not right now. Kishir gave a clear answer and slightly turned his head. Following his gaze, Yudhir turned to see the back of Prince Ajane, who was conversing with the cavalry members, and narrowed his eyes. We can proceed with specific cooperation with the mages after the second dispatch arrives. Until then, we need to finish what we must do now. We can't delay any priorities. The original plan was to immediately deliver the letter upon visiting the stronghold of the mages within the Great Serene Forest and promptly depart. However, due to the unforeseen outbreak of monsters, they were caught up in the continuous battles, and much of the day had already been consumed. I understand. We can't afford to waste any more time here. So, should I tell Michelin that we will proceed with detailed discussions later and leave a brief oath in writing? How can they guarantee that the minds of the mages wouldn't change in the time it took them to escort Prince Ajane to his destination and return? In order to maintain their mutual agreement to cooperate, a tangible assurance was needed. An oath, the most common form of guarantee, was proposed with his intent, but Kishir immediately shook his head. No, there is a far more reliable option. We can leave some of our party here, including Priest Lusan, and go. Excuse me? At the unexpected suggestion, his eyes widened, and Kishir spoke unabashedly. There are many here who need treatment. The mages currently need the power of a priest more than anyone else, and they could use help defending this place. If possible, isn't it more trustworthy to leave people who can actually help here instead of depending on mere words? That is definitely a good point. It was a reasonable suggestion. The cavalry members were exceptional in their abilities, so even if they had left a few here while taking Prince Ajane to his destination, there would be no issue in fulfilling their mission. However, in the Western Mage Union filled with injured, any remaining strength would be desperately needed. Even if I was the one left with Prince Ajane, there would be no chance of him dying or getting hurt. After making cold judgment, Yudhir soon nodded his head, expressing his agreement. I understand. Then, who are you thinking of leaving behind? Who do you think? Would it be Khana, who could quickly gather the most honest information about the mages? Or perhaps it could be Kakane, who was naturally attractive and friendly enough to lower others' guards and possessed enough skill to handle the monsters. The Eldor siblings, who excel at evacuating others in emergencies, would also be suitable. Amon, with his peculiar ability to hide targets in darkness from the gaze of enemies or monsters, wasn't a bad choice either. Although the chance of leaving Aemon, whose ability I have chosen to initially hide and protect Prince Ajane in case of emergencies, might be low. Is it really something that requires such deep thought? While Yidar was deep in thought, Kishir questioned him with a tone implying he should have known by now. Is it Kana? No. Then it must be Gakane. No, not him either. Then neither him, Eldor, or Fin Eldor. Watching Kishir predict and answer his queries, Yidar suddenly thought of a possibility he hadn't considered. Wait, could it be? Could it be me?